Hey everybody, we're going to take we're not going to start right at one. I apologize in advance. We're going to move a few more mics up here just because of the number of members. Hey everybody, welcome to the second meeting of the Senate Special Committee on Eliminating Georgia's Income Tax. If you could just make your way to your chairs if you don't mind. Senator, good to see you. I see Senator Watson brought his cowboy hat to make our friends from Texas feel welcome. Thank you. That's good. Well, thank you all for joining us today for the September meeting of the Senate Special Committee on Eliminating Georgia's Income Tax. Today, we start to shift from our talk about whether the state of Georgia should eliminate its income tax and learning instead from states who've already blazed this trail. We're fortunate to hear from leaders from Florida, from Texas, Tennessee, and Iowa today. These states represent different parts of our country, but they share a common belief. Families and businesses grow stronger when government takes less from their paychecks. Florida's shown us that a state with no income tax can still fund world-class infrastructure and services, education, and emergency response. By leaning into broad-based sales tax and tourism revenue, millions of people move there every decade, not just because of the sunshine, but also because of the opportunity. Texas has proven that eliminating the income tax can create an economic magnet. Companies from around the nation choose, and really around the world, choose to plant their roots in Texas because their tax structure is stable, it's simple, and it's pro-growth. That translates directly into jobs and to higher wages for working families. A little bit closer to home, we have someone who's going to talk to us from Tennessee. And Tennessee is proof that southeastern states can work to make this happen. Tennessee phased out its income tax completely in 2021. And since then, they've seen record-setting growth in small business formations and also a growth in their population. They've become a state that we are now calling a peer state and trying to chase them on what they've already done. Tennessee did this carefully with strong fiscal discipline, and it's a roadmap that we think Georgia can learn from, and we appreciate you being here today to talk about that. Iowa, who you're going to hear from an Iowa presenter, they bring us a slightly different lesson. They're not fully there yet, but they've aggressively moved towards eliminating their state income tax by funding what we call the Taxpayer Relief Fund. What stands out is their commitment to lowering rates step by step. And that shows that you don't have to flip the switch overnight, that you can phase reform in, you can do it responsibly, and you can give citizens certainty. Our charge as this committee, as you know, is not to copy any one state. It's to study what's worked elsewhere, to understand the trade-offs, and to design a Georgia model that works for our citizens and plays to our strengths. We have a diverse economy, a hardworking population, and one of the best business climates in the country. By eliminating the state income tax, it's only going to make us more competitive. And that's why we brought our friends and neighbors here to tell us how they pulled this off. What I think will be clear from the testimony we hear today is that eliminating the income tax is not only possible, it can be a catalyst for growth, a catalyst for innovation, and a catalyst for prosperity. Georgia's always been a leader. Now we have the chance to lead again. And let's listen more closely and learn from our neighbors, and then a state that's not necessarily our neighbor, but it's clearly on this path, and start building a vision where Georgians can keep more of what they earn and our economy can grow as a result for generations to come. With that being said, I want to introduce our first speaker, and I believe, Ben, you're going to be the first up. We are joined, though, before I introduce Ben, let me just tell you we're joined by four presenters, four budget, policy, and tax experts from across the state. Ben Watkins from the state of Florida. He's going to be first, and I'll give you a little bit more in-depth introduction as you each come. Tom Sands from Iowa, he's going to be with us online because of a scheduling conflict that arose late. Tony Nicknajad, and I said it wrong again, Tony, who is from Tennessee but has strong roots here in West Georgia, went to the University of Georgia, so we know we can trust his opinion. And Sarah Hicks, who's from Texas and worked closely with General Abbott, with Governor Abbott, who is acting like a general more and more every day in good ways. So I'm going to call up first Ben Watkins, and thank you so much. The pro tem reminded me that I did not follow our Senate tradition of starting this meeting with a moment of silence and prayer, and I'm going to ask Chairman Harbison if he doesn't mind to lead us in an invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bow your head. Father God, we thank you for this chance to deliberate in a godly manner. Thank you for safe coming and going for all of our members and participants. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem, for reminding me of that. And Ben, if you'd like to please approach the dais over here, we're going to get you to speak from the podium to our left and most people's rights. Mr. Ben Watkins was appointed by the governor and confirmed by the cabinet as director of the Florida Division of Bond and Finance in 1995. Director Watkins is well known and respected for his work in the municipal bond industry. He's an active member and has served in a variety of leadership roles on the muni associations. He's been nationally recognized for his contributions to the municipal industry and received several awards in that field. Additionally, Director Watkins serves as the chairman and the past president of the Economic Club of Florida. He's a board member of the Municipal Code Corporation, Florida State University Coastal and Marine Lab Advisory Board, the Maclay School Board of Trustees, and Tall Timbers Research and Land Conservancy Board, which I've been to on more than one occasion just across the border there, south of Thomasville. Prior to his role as director, he practiced public finance law with Sutherland Asbill here in Atlanta, and he received his Juris Doctorate from the University of Florida and a Bachelor of Science in Engineering from Auburn University. A Florida native, Director Watkins and his wife Joy have two daughters who reside in Tallahassee, but he has a plethora of grandchildren who are here in the Atlanta area, and that's probably how we were able to talk him to come up here and join us today. So if you will, I'm going to turn the floor over to this Auburn and Florida grad, and if he figured out how to do it, then guys, I tell you, we can do it too. Director Watkins, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here. Grandkids are the best part about getting old. The rest of it kind of stinks, but those grandkids more than make up for it, believe me. I wanted to share with you my experience, a little bit about my background first, just to set the stage. I have roots here in Georgia. My great-grandfather owned a farm in Chamblee and a saloon on Trinity Street. And I've spent 20 years of my life, of my professional life, here in Atlanta. So, and both my girls live here in Atlanta and my grandkids live here in Atlanta. So I have a vested interest in the outcome of all of this great debate that you guys are having and the vision you have for Georgia. I also live in Tallahassee, Florida, born and raised there, went home and took this job doing finance for the state and thought it was going to be a 2-year gig. And here I am 30 years later and can't find my way out. But being so close to the Georgia line, the border, I feel, again, a sense of kindred spirit with the folks here, with the chairman from Visalia and the senator from Moultrie. That's really all part, we all really should be part of the same state. The truth of the matter is, the Panhandle, and we talk alike too. So we have a lot in common in terms of where we sit and how we live. And y'all probably view Florida as a foreign country. And we do too. One of the jokes I say is, but anything south of Orlando, we pulled up the flag down there a long time ago. But it's a very diverse state. It's as long as it's the state of California. And we cover, just an extraordinarily wide breadth in terms of the diversity of the population. But nevertheless, we do have a lot in common. And I first want to compliment you on this building. I am jealous beyond belief. I've been to the Capitol in Texas. I've been to the Capitol in Nashville as well. This is beautiful. We've just got a state office building and that's it. And it's as ugly as it can be. So this is a great place. And I appreciate the opportunity to visit. Like I said, we've got a lot in common. We're both states. We deal with education, healthcare, transportation. We're a southern state. We are fiscally conservative generally. We're very well managed, both you guys and us. And we've been blessed with great leadership over the years on both the executive branch side and the legislative branch side. Same parallels running down the track together with fundamentally sound policies, which are extraordinarily important in how states are managed financially and fiscally. The biggest difference, and what we're here, what I wanted to share with you is my experience over the years. The big difference is, where do we get our money from? The money that we live on every day to fund all of the critical programs run at the state level. And the fundamental difference between Georgia and Florida is we live on sales taxes and you guys live on personal income taxes. And sales tax, we have no personal income tax in Florida, and I don't expect we ever will. And what I wanted to share with you is, from my view of the world, the most important thing, one of the most important things, it's basically your report card, your credit rating. And Florida's a triple. That means, AAA ratings by all 3 rating agencies, which is a small and esteemed group. And it's a reflection of the way that you have been managed prudently financially over the years. And and Florida, when I started, we were AA1, AA+, which is one notch below AAA. And the conventional wisdom from the rating agencies was, we'll never be AAA because we don't have a diverse revenue stream, that we are overly dependent on a volatile and narrow revenue stream. And so, well, structurally, that ended up being mythology. And it took us a decade, but we finally convinced the rating agencies through different economic cycles that the sales tax in the state of Florida was not only broad-based, it was durable and robust and captures growth without taxing income. And so we live, that's the way we live. And the most important thing from that perspective was we had to present data to show them through different economic cycles that the personal income tax, and through the Great Recession, and especially typified by California, the personal income tax ended up being much more volatile than our sales tax. And so that dispelled the myth around the notion that sales taxes are narrow and volatile, and it requires a breadth of revenue streams in order to reach the AAA rating. So don't let the notion that it will adversely impact your credit rating if you find your way to shift from an income tax to a consumption tax. That's not true. We've been there, we've done that, and we've been the beneficiary of that AAA rating. The most important thing that I would say is protecting the AAA because of the world that I live in. And the two things that relative to that are structural budget balance and reserves to deal with contingencies, financial flexibility. And if you can do those two things, then the source of the monies that you live on are less important for the long-term viability and fiscal health of the state. And just anecdotally, we receive, and the numbers are probably roughly the same for Georgia, receive 75% of our general revenues from sales tax. We collect $50 billion a year currently in sales tax annually. That number has grown dramatically, reflecting the growth in our population since 2000. And I would largely say because our governor had the courage and conviction and got it right on COVID. And we stayed open, and people have flocked to the state. Remote working, second homes, retirees. Why do people move to Florida? What is our secret to success in Florida? Warm climate and low taxes. And that's why people come to Florida. And as long as that's the case, then we will continue to prosper. Primarily New York, New Jersey, Illinois, high tax jurisdictions, people are migrating south to live in warm weather and have low taxes. And that's our competitive advantage. So maybe, ironically, I hope you guys don't make any progress so we can maintain our competitive advantage over capturing the retirees who are inevitably moving south and capture the baby boomers. So that'll conclude my remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman, now or later.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Any questions from members of the committee? You got a couple. We're gonna start. I think your last comment evoked a few questions there, Jeff. So you take it from this. The first one's from Chairman Hofstetler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little bit more familiar probably with Tennessee's tax structure than Florida as it deals with businesses and S corporations and stuff. I know 75% of your revenue, you said, came from the sales tax. Where does the rest of the revenue come from? And could you enlighten me on?
Corporate income taxes, insurance premium tax primarily. Let me take a quick look.
corporate tax rate right now is what?
It tracks the federal level. It's low and it's moved up and down, but I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I'll get back with you on that, but. Also documentary stamp taxes, which is a real estate transfer tax on deeds and mortgages
Mhm.
when real estate transactions occur.
And that's
Primary-
fine. I don't need every single category. I was just trying to get the gist of money, the corporate tax. Okay.
It's primarily corporate tax and insurance premium tax. Yes, sir.
So following up on that, when you eliminated, though you don't have a state income tax, personal income tax, Florida still does charge a corporate income tax.
Correct.
Two questions at the front, Chairman Dolezal.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ben, for being here. A couple, maybe just quick questions. What is the state income tax, or sorry, the state sales tax in Florida?
6%.
Is that tax labor as well as goods? I'm down front.
Hey,
Excuse me?
Does that tax labor as well as goods?
Just services. Or goods, I'm sorry.
Goods, yeah, that's about
Not
to say.
services.
No-
We tried that back in 1990. That did not go well. It was an expansion of the tax base. The notion was we needed to expand the sales tax to cover services as well. It lasted 1 year and then was extraordinarily unpopular and went away.
If you don't mind staying close to your mic, because I'm getting some text from folks who are online who want to make sure they hear what you say. And just to recap what you said, Florida's sales tax is 6%. That was the question from Chairman Dolezal. And also you tax goods, not services. Florida tried to do that in the 1990s, incredibly unpopular, repealed the next year, correct?
Correct.
Is there any state property tax that you guys levy on property?
But at the state level, like Georgia, we collect no real estate taxes at the state level. That's all at the local level.
Right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Watson.
Senator Dolezal got my question there. I was just curious about the real estate and that's out of state, in state, nobody's taxed on real estate.
Out at the state level.
Yeah.
Property taxes are for the property tax revenues are levied and collected for the benefit of local governments, primarily to fund public education.
Okay, just with all the second homes and all that you have in your market there, I just didn't know if maybe y'all had a state tax that was just on them, not in-state folks.
So everybody pays the same.
I know I had another question on the podium. I'll put to him, Mr. Senator Walker.
Thank you, Chairman. Definitely appreciate you being here. I'll be heading through Tallahassee in October to go trout and red fishing down around the Panacea area. So I want to get your numbers on your spots before you leave today. But I'm curious on your sales tax. Do you all exempt any? Do you exempt medicine? Do you exempt groceries? Do you exempt?
Are a plethora of exemptions to that. And our primary way to deliver tax relief, because we have no personal income tax, is through sales tax holidays on hurricane supplies, school supplies, now guns and ammo. So that is the normal way the legislature have delivered tax relief to the citizens, is through temporary exemptions and now have been moved to permanent exemptions. But there are a host of exemptions for things that are important to people: baby supplies, diapers, formula, groceries, medicine, the basics of life that people need a break on.
And you may not have that question, so. And then, is the local sales tax, does it vary by jurisdiction, or is there kind of a common amount? I mean, I guess I'm curious, what is your total sales tax for the
Option sales taxes that local governments, cities and counties can levy for specified purposes under state law. And it can be no more than 2.5%. And so it varies across the board. Nobody's at 8.5%, because if you took the 6 that the state takes and then you added on, if you passed every local option sales tax you could, it could theoretically go up to 8.5. I believe 8% in some jurisdictions is the highest. It's generally 7 or 7.5, and it's generally dedicated to education capital outlay or infrastructure within the local government jurisdiction. Although it can be for indigent healthcare and fire service and other specified purposes under state law.
Insurance, what is your insurance premium tax rate?
We collect 1.8 billion. I don't know the rate. It's 3.7% of our general revenues.
Okay, thank you.
And the corporate income tax, back to the question the senator had, 5.8 billion or 12% of our general revenues for corporate income taxes. And I'm happy to send you a pie chart so you guys can, so you can see this illustrated.
Got a couple of more questions. I'll tell you in my head when I laid out this meeting, senators, my plan was to have all our presenters and then sort of ask them questions as a whole. But no, y'all are doing a great job of this. So I'm going to reverse what I did and let the questions keep going. Y'all just got some really good questions so far. Chairman Harbison.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Director, can you tell us about the 75% volatility of the property tax and what influenced that? The volatility aspect of the property taxes.
So the 75% is the amount of revenues that sales tax represent of our general revenues at the state level. So 3/4 of our money comes from sales taxes. And the rating agencies viewed sales taxes as being volatile, moving up and down with the economy.
Right.
We have not experienced, and that was in their head. It was a bias within the financial services community that proved not to be true. And so we have not experienced this volatility that the rating agency said could be associated with sales taxes. Even during recessionary periods, the revenues have not gone down. They've only gone down one time in my tenure. That was during the COVID, when it flattened out because we temporarily were locked down. So sales taxes are not necessarily inherently volatile as the rating agencies had thought they would be.
Well, I beg your pardon. I thought that 75% was applied to property taxes.
Sales taxes is set, the 75% is related to the amount of general revenues we collect at the state level, whose source is sales tax.
And finally, sir, if I may, what about, I had one more question regarding the school districts and how they funded again, and how does the sales tax covers that as well, and to what extent?
Yeah, sales tax does not cover that. It's primarily real estate property taxes.
Okay, so that is property tax.
That is property tax, but we don't collect it at the state level. It's collected at the local level by the school districts.
I'm glad to hear that, because I once served on the school board and here at least in Muskogee County, and one of the great angst that they create in their minds about that is, hey, we need the property taxes because it's a sure thing. We know the services are going to be produced for the students and the teachers and the city that we represent. So I'm glad to know that.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
One more question that we've taken everybody all the way through, and then we're gonna get the next presenter, even though I want you to know you still have more questions. So
Okay.
we'll try to get to them then at the end. Chairman, Senator Orrick, make sure I hit your right button. Number 5. If you don't mind, please make sure we're not making statements. Let's get questions, because I do want to make sure we've got enough time for all 4 presenters.
Thanks, our presenter from the great state of Florida. Picking up.
I think we're picking up, Senator Kennedy, do you mind if we take your mic and hold it over? Thank you so much, Senator.
All right, great. That's great. Thank you again. And thanks to our visitor from the Sunshine State. We've all enjoyed time in your state, needless to say. The findings about Florida's tax system is that your state tax system has been called the most regressive in the nation. Are you familiar with that?
No, ma'am.
That the bottom 20% of Florida taxpayers, measured by income, bear an effective state and local tax rate 5 times the rate for the top 1% of households. Are you familiar with that?
No, ma'am.
Well, you had a pie chart that you were referencing, and I wonder if we're going to be able to see that, because the effective tax rate, what do the top 1% paying? Do you know that answer to that?
No, ma'am. I would say that my general commentary on a notion like that, probably done by an economist, is we have a lot of rich people moving to Florida, and we're happy they're coming. And they spend a lot of money when they come and retire there. And that is is the biggest reason that our revenues continue to grow. That's our people moving to Florida is our growth business. People moving to Florida to retire to Florida is our growth business. And those people bring money with them. And they spend money on goods and services to beat the band because they're retiring. And that's been the secret to our success in Florida.
But that success, isn't it true, means that the richest pay the least?
I have no idea. I doubt it.
Well, and also the other question I had, the property tax is levied at the county level. Is that right?
Yes,
The
ma'am.
local level. And that would be helpful to understand too, what kind of tax burden is being created in the localities, one by one, when they're figuring out how to fund their schools and run their operations.
Yes, ma'am. To give you some context on
Uh-huh.
that,
Thank you. Go ahead.
to give you some context on that in terms of tax burden at the local level and property taxes, we are there's currently an exercise going on in doging local governments, and the reason is our assessed values have grown dramatically because the real estate values in Florida have increased dramatically, and it's become burdensome on citizens and taxpayers because the local governments have left the millage rate the same and are collecting significantly more revenues than what they did 5 years ago without the same commensurate increase in population. So that's the dynamic in Florida with respect to property and property taxes and property values.
Mr. Watkins, I appreciate the testimony you've given so far. I've got 2 quick questions to end your comments on. Florida doesn't charge a higher sales tax to you if you're poor rather than if you're rich, do they?
Everybody pays the same thing.
I want to make sure I thought that would be the case, but I just wanted to make sure. Second question is, we know that the state of Florida, we share some media markets with you. So we get to watch your news, you get to watch our news. We know you're in a fight right now on real estate taxes, and the governor's made that property taxes a major part of the fight in Florida in the legislature. At any point in time in this discussion to alleviate property taxes, has Florida discussed thinking about considering levying a personal income tax?
No, sir, it's not on the table and wouldn't expect it to be.
Thank you a lot. And please stay around because there may be some questions if we have time at the end to get back to.
Thank you, sir.
Our next presenter, I'd like to introduce Representative Tom Sands. He's visiting us virtually. He's going to join us via Zoom from Iowa. Tom is a longtime advocate for strong fiscal policy, tirelessly promoting the belief that government at any level is only as strong as its people. He's the former president and CEO of the Iowa Taxpayers Association, and he's for nearly 8 years spent his time trying to shape fiscal policy that impacts the Iowa citizens and businesses. Before joining ITA, Sands served for 14 years in the Iowa House of Representatives as a dedicated voice for the Iowa taxpayers. During his last 6 years, he chaired the Tax Writing Committee, the House Ways and Means Committee in the Iowa legislature. Throughout his tenure, he's received numerous rewards for his work on tax policy, and we're just honored to have him join us here today to tell us a little bit about what we've seen happen in Iowa and also give us some thoughts on maybe some ways we should go and maybe some paths we should stay away from. So, Chairman Sands, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Senators, and it's a privilege to be able to attend today. I would much rather be there in person. I have visited, I think, 20 state capitals around the nation, and Georgia is on my to-do list. So hopefully we'll get there in the next year. But I have been to Texas and Tennessee, and I also want to get to Florida. So a couple of them down in that neck of the woods I'd like to get to in the very near future. I do want to share just a little bit today. And before that, I might add one thing is presently, this last year, I have been a senior tax consultant for Iowans for Tax Relief Foundation and still working on good fiscal policy. And it's really good, sound fiscal policy is what motivated me to run for the legislature clear back in 2002. I wanted to share the original purpose and how we established and why we established the Taxpayer Trust Fund, which is now known as the Taxpayer Relief Fund, because this fund is instrumental not only in getting Iowa's personal income tax rate down from the very high 8.9% to a present 3.8% flat tax, but it will continue to be instrumental to lower Iowa's income tax rate and still be able to fund legislative priorities and citizens' priorities in the general fund budget. Back in 2011, one of the things we noticed when we took over the majority in the Iowa House is that one of the flaws to Iowa's spending limitation, which we have a 99% spending limitation, was the surplus carry forward. Now, I'm not going to tell you, and please don't misunderstand me, that I think a surplus carry forward from one fiscal year to the next is bad policy. It actually is a good reflection that your revenues are exceeding your expenditures. But there are many different reasons why the surplus can be established in one fiscal year. And one of them, at least in Iowa, has been that when the Revenue Estimating Conference makes its projection for the fiscal year, that is usually done in December. In fact, by Iowa law, the governor has to establish their budget based on the December revenue estimation for the revenue receipts. Also by statute, the legislature needs to base its budget off of the lowest of either the December or the March estimate in case revenues fall. But in good economic times, when revenues are growing much faster and higher than what was projected, that increases the budget surplus of a fiscal year. Once the fiscal year is closed out, that will have multiple effects in the present fiscal year as well as the budgeted fiscal year. What we done in 2011 was then Speaker of the Iowa House, Craig Paulson, came to me and wanted a mechanism to collect as many of those over-collected dollars as we could from the projections. So we established the Taxpayer Trust Fund and stated that the revenue, once the fiscal year was closed out, the amount of general fund revenue that came in above what was projected would be transferred to the Taxpayer Trust Fund. Those monies were put there to be given back to the taxpayer, who is the one that paid them in the first place, because keeping our taxpayers stronger helped make our state not only more fiscally sound, but stronger as a state as well. Over the years, or I want to, in 2011, we had a divided legislature. And while it took most of the session to actually get that fund established, the most we could do was have a maximum amount of 60 million that could be deposited into this fund on an annual basis, no matter how much the revenue was exceeding over that. The other thing we could do is we could not do is establish a rate reduction on tax policy. So we had to establish a credit to give the money back to the taxpayer on their return. When you look at good policy, that is not good or sound tax policy, but is the only thing we could get past the legislature at that time. In 2018, under Governor Reynolds' leadership, as well as a strong Senate and House Ways and Means committees, they were able to take the Taxpayer Trust Fund, rename it into the Taxpayer Relief Fund, but more importantly, eliminate the maximum deposit that could be transferred into that account, as well as get rid of the credit and establish a rate reduction program that has started in 18 that we are still experiencing today, that has dropped our top personal income tax rate, like I said, from a high of 8.9% with several brackets down to a flat 3.8%. And we're hoping we can go further yet with some good discipline. Today, because of establishing that fund and getting rid of the maximum deposits, to give you a little bit of history, in 2018, the Taxpayer Relief Fund had a balance of $13.5 million. For the end of actual fiscal year 2024, it has a balance of $3.7 billion. It is estimated to be just over $4 billion when fiscal year 2025 is closed out, and it's projected to have over $3.6 billion in it at the end of fiscal year 2026, and that's with taking some money out as a safety net for the rate reduction, because we're just in our first tax year of a 3.8% top rate, or rate period, for individuals. Our corporate rate has also been reduced from a high of 12% of 4 brackets down to a 7.1%, I believe it is. And it is on a trigger system that if triggers are met, it will go on down to 5.5%. Some of the weaknesses, or I think things that still need to be done on the Taxpayer Relief Fund that would make it even stronger today, is to address some of the problems that still exist out there. One thing I've noticed over the last several years, as new legislators come on, they see a large pool of money and think of ways to spend that without the knowledge that those dollars are actually obligated to the taxpayers of Iowa as tax relief. One of my colleagues, John Hendrickson, and I at the Iowans for Tax Relief Foundation are working on establishing some revenue triggers to work on down to elimination of Iowa's income tax, using the Taxpayer Relief Fund as that safety net. But like I said, some of the dangers with it right now is while state code says that it is obligated to tax relief, that can be changed at any time, and ways to strengthen that would be better, like constitutional protection or some type of long-term investment that would still allow money to come out to cover the shortage in a rate reduction. before revenues start growing again. And there might be other ways as well, but those are some of the things we're working on. For long-term rate reduction, anticipating some of the other questions of the previous holder, our state sales tax is 6%. 1/6 of that 6% is earmarked for local school infrastructure and gets transferred back to the local schools. There is a 1% option sales tax for local cities, local cities and or counties. And so the highest our state sales tax or our sales tax could be in Iowa is 7%. And a lot of the different cities and counties, or counties rather, jurisdictions are close to 7, but not all. Personal income tax makes up about 50% of our total general fund revenue. Sales tax makes up about 1/3 of our general fund revenue, with other taxes and other receipts making up the balance. Presently, Iowa education takes about 50% or 40-some% of our general fund revenue. I think, Mr. Chairman, that concludes most of the comments that I made, but I do appreciate the opportunity to present to you today virtually, although I still want to get to Atlanta, and be happy to answer any questions whenever you see fit for those to be asked.
Thank you, Chairman Sands. Chairman, were you getting feedback on your end? I got some text from folks that said it's getting feedback, but I've got every mic turned off up here except for yours. So I apologize if that was happening to you.
I was getting a little bit of feedback. I was trying to ignore it, but it did distract me a couple times, but that's all right.
Gotcha. Well, I apologize. We'll blame it on Iowa, not Georgia. So, but thank you again for being here. Any questions from members of the committee? Start. Chairman Huffstetler.
Thank you for the presentation, the numbers. I should ask you if you're Iowa State fan, but that's not my primary question. You said 50% of your revenue was coming from the personal income tax, and then about 1/3 from the sales tax, which I guess would be 33%. But then you had a corporate tax that had gone down to, I think you said, in the 7% range, maybe going down eventually. How much of the revenue comes from the corporate income tax, if my other numbers are correct?
Just about 7%.
7% of the total revenue?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And then we are in our first year of the 3.8%. So we're anticipating a little more revenue drop for fiscal year 2026 due to that rate reduction. So the percentages are slowly working down, but that's where we are presently.
Thank you.
I think you had some other questions, Senator Roark.
Thank you so much for being with us, and thanks for your public service up there in Iowa. Following up on that last question, the Des Moines Register, that's esteemed newspaper in your backyard, had an article saying that the revenue is projected to drop by 500 million in each of the next 2 years due to these tax cuts. And has that occurred? Has 1 year of that occurred? Because they're projecting $1 billion drop in revenue over 2 years from doing that flat tax policy.
In fiscal year 2026, it is estimated that the revenue will drop $463.6 million. And that is the amount that was transferred from the taxpayer relief fund going back into the general fund. So that's where, Senator, that's where the safety net of having that taxpayer relief fund comes in, is that shortfall was made up because of the taxpayer relief fund.
And does the math work long-term on that? How are y'all seeing that unfold? the math for the size of what's in the taxpayer relief fund, being able to fill the holes year after year.
Yes, the math does work going forward on the 5-year projections. And of course, it's all contingent on what the economy does. The one thing that does make me a little nervous here in Iowa is the farm economy. But that's the importance of having a safety net to carry you through those low economic times. And that's the big advantage of sitting on $4 billion in there when our general fund budget, or excuse me, our general fund expenditures are just under, they're about $9.5 billion. So that's a pretty good percentage of the general fund budget we've got in there.
So just final question, if you will, and I'll release the mic to my colleagues, of course. So you're funding you're transferring money from the taxpayer relief fund back into the general fund to meet ongoing obligations that Iowa has. Is that right? It's filling a hole in your general budget that was created by the flat tax move?
Yes, in a perfect world, what should happen is what I would like to see happen is the money that is transferred out of the taxpayer relief fund is that is identified to a reduction because of the rate reduction. And that could be done by the Department of Revenue working with the Department of Management establishing that number. What present law says, Senator, is that it can be up to 50% of the reduction can come from the taxpayer relief fund. So they tried to get around the point I'm trying to make, Senator, is economic times grow and shrink, grow and shrink. And over the long term, they tend to grow, but you do have downturns, and now's when I'm getting that feedback. Maybe I'm talking too loud. That the taxpayer relief fund was established that the dollars that can be attributed to because of the rate reduction can come from the taxpayer relief fund.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You got another question, Chairman Dolezal.
This raises a follow-up to Senator Orrock's question. Is that the sole source of reserve funds that the state holds? Essentially, when you guys set this up, were you allocating what would have otherwise been a reserve fund?
No, that is the only one that has been set up in the last 20 years specifically for tax relief. But we've got close to $1 billion in our cash reserve accounts as well.
And as a follow-up, is the only use, obviously, of those, I think you said statutorily then, is to offset reserves. What if there's not a rate cut in a given year, but reserves are down? Can that taxpayer relief fund still be used to bridge that gap, or does it need to be tied in a year where you guys are having a rate cut?
A rate reduction the result of a rate reduction, Senator, in my opinion, may have an effect more than a year. So if that rate reduction, for example sake, let's say reducing a rate can be proven, or can be proven that rate reduction is lowered revenue for three fiscal years. Then the monies coming out of the taxpayer relief fund could be used for that amount over those 3 fiscal years. Under present law, that's what I would want to have it set up. Under present law, the statute says up to 50% of that reduction can be transferred from the taxpayer relief fund to the general fund.
One more question, Mr. Chairman, if you would.
Sure.
In your journey from 8.9% down to 3.8%, did that coincide with any sort of increase in the sales tax, or has the sales tax always been at the 6% that you mentioned during that time?
Since the sales tax was raised from 5% to 6% in 2008 or 2009. But and that was the last time sales tax has been increased. However, before the sales tax went from 5% to 6%, the schools had a local option sales tax. So while there was some tax increase at that time, most of it just went from a local option tax to a state tax that was reversed to the schools. So the sales tax has not been increased anytime during our rate reduction journey.
That you highlighted what I wanted to point out. I wrote down your years. You didn't start cutting your income tax till 2011 or setting up for that until 2011, and you have not increased your sales tax during that time.
Correct.
Correct. Thank you. More on a macro level, Mr. Chairman, you served during this time. I just want to ask you generally, what prompted Iowa to take this really bold move of moving your income tax from where you were at one of the higher state income taxes, personal income taxes, almost 9%. Georgia's was never that high. Down to now 3.8%. I mean, you're almost half of ours now, or where we were. What prompted that tell me, as you're based upon your knowledge from what you did in the or what we would call the General Assembly, but the Iowa legislature.
Be happy to. One of the things that many of us have adopted, and a lot of this happened since Governor Reynolds has been there, and the Iowa Senate and the Iowa Senate led by now Jack Whitver were very good fiscal disciplined budget hawks. So they were able to keep their spending under control, still spend or still fund the state priorities. Revenues continue to increase, but we don't have Florida's climate or Texas climate. We don't have people flocking to the state of Iowa, especially during the wintertime. So we were looking at ways to put money back into taxpayers' pockets, both individuals and businesses, because it is getting those people that earn the money to keep more of their revenue. We thought and believe that by doing that, that was your best economic development plan. And that has held out to be true. So it was a driver to initiate the rate reduction. What has helped even to take it down to the 3.8 is we were seeing results of revenue increasing with rate reduction decreasing. Now we've come far enough that we probably need a pause to let it reset and then look at ways to take it lower yet. And I hope that answers your question, Mr. Chair.
It does. I want to know why you were bold and made that move. Tell me this, Mr. Chairman. You said you've got to take a pause right now. I'm sure you'll pick back up on this rate reduction afterwards. What has been the tenure between the rate cut and then the revenue increase? We've heard some statistics from other economists on how long you have to wait to see that growth. I want to see what your answer is and compare it to theirs.
Well, I think right now we are at the real hard test at 3.8%. And it's all about timing, right? So there are so many uncertainties in the world right at the moment, and our farm economy is one of them, that it could take a little bit longer than what we're anticipating. But we do see sales and use tax continue to be steady to growing, which we need that to grow. Our revenue estimating conference only goes out 2 years. So I'm eagerly waiting to see what they are going to project for revenues, not only for 26, but for 27 as well, to see what they see on the economic future. I think 2 to 3 years is what it looks like that that our revenues will come back up to where they are. But it may take a little bit longer than that before another rate reduction can go into place. It all kind of depends on not only Iowa's economy, but the national economy as well.
Well, you must need your honorary doctorate in economics now, because they told us 18 to 24 months and you said 24 to 36. So you're right in the ballpark, just to give you a grade of what the other folks told us. So thank you for being here. I think you've exhausted the questions on the committee at this time. Really appreciate you being here today. Thank you so much for your attendance. Our next presenter will be in person, and we have him here today, Tony Nicknajad. I got it right this time, right, Tony? From the state of Tennessee, that wanted to beat Georgia, but he was so kind, knowing he was coming here this afternoon, that he gave it up to us in overtime. I understand, though, that Tony, you are a UGA dog, so thanks for. We hope you were a little bit happy with the result. Tony is the principal at Stones River Group, a Nashville-based consulting firm specializing in state and local government relations and strategic communications. He's an expert in Tennessee's appropriations and revenue process, because he served as the policy director to Governor Bill Lee from 2019 to 2023, where he co-developed the governor's recommended budget, translating policy goals into appropriations language and aligning the proposals with revenue estimates. He led the development of the Tennessee Works Tax Act of 2023, which was a single sales factor appointment, and it led to really why we want to talk to him. As you know, he was in the state of Tennessee when Tennessee completely eliminated its state income tax, which is something that now we are looking at doing here, or will do here in Georgia. Tony, thanks again for being here. Glad you got some Georgia roots, and appreciate you taking the time to drive down and visit us today.
And really do appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's quite an honor, as the chairman alluded to. Grew up just down the road in LaGrange, Georgia, born and raised. Had the opportunity to attend Georgia State University just down the road before graduating from the University of Georgia. And while my postgraduate career did take me to Tennessee, my entire family still remains here in Georgia. So while I'm extraordinarily passionate about tax policy, I'm also very passionate about the work this committee is doing, and as it does to have a direct impact on my own family. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. And yes, go Dogs. I'm very happy to be able to say that. For the presentation today, I want to prepare a brief slide presentation. I will jump around a little bit, anticipating a few of the questions, and wanting to leave enough time for additional Q&A. Beginning with some of the comments that the, sorry about that. Can we hear that? I'll work on the slide. I'll begin just some general remarks. I think, as some of the other testifiers have alluded to today, Tennessee and Georgia are part of a proud coterie of states that are beginning to lead the nation in terms of economic growth. In fact, you will see for the first time in our nation's modern history, we have seen an economic shift, real exodus, both of business and of individuals from the Northeast portion of our country, New York, Boston, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, down into the Southeast. And that is driven primarily by 6 states: Florida, Texas, Georgia, the Carolinas, and Tennessee. Both Tennessee and Georgia are in the top 8 for population growth and net domestic migration. Our shared approach to regulatory and tax policy, I think, is a major driver of that. And continued business investment has been a longtime priority of both of our states. So quite a lot in common. When you think about our economies at a macro level, on a per capita basis, we have both very similar tax burdens and similar state budget expenditures, and have seen through the leadership of past General Assemblies and governors significant growth in manufacturing and other exporting industries. That kind of economic growth does have does continue to be a flywheel. It does continue to drive additional growth. Tennessee in particular has added 79,000 people just in 2024 and like Georgia is continuing to see increased population and in-migration. Difference between Tennessee and Georgia, however, is as we are working through our economic development, as we're working through our recruitment of major corporations to bring their corporate headquarters or bring their manufacturing centers into Tennessee, the competition for labor is fierce, globally and domestically. And being able to market that we do not have an income tax, that more of the take-home pay of your employee, more of the salaries that your employees earn is going to go home with them, is a significant asset. And we've seen that both with the Oracle announcement, the Amazon announcement. In-N-Out has relocated its corporate headquarters, or has relocated an eastern corporate headquarters from California to Tennessee, and that corresponding movement of jobs is continuing to drive growth in our sales tax collections, growth in our corporate income tax collections, which then go into the state budget, which can then go fund education, roads, and important priorities that support our state. What I'll do is I'll provide just a very brief high-level overview of Tennessee's tax portfolio before going into questions. On a state budget level, like Florida, Tennessee is very fortunate to be a AAA state. We've had that rating since 2018 without an income tax, and part of that, a big part of that equation is conservative budgeting, where we manage to keep expenses low, keep our expenses low while maintaining a high quality of service. Over the last 5 fiscal years, we've seen significant economic growth, both in collections of our franchise and excise tax, our corporate taxes, and our sales tax. There's been some allusions to volatility here today. I think that's something that we take seriously and do guard against. But historically, what we've seen, where we've seen the most volatility is in the corporate income tax. I'll show you a slide here in a moment on our sales tax history. But knowing that when times are good, collections are going to come in high, we do prepare, as Iowa does, for times when that growth rate may start to decrease. And so very intentional strategy that Tennessee has pursued here has been, as new recurring revenues come in and new recurring over collections come in, we do seek to allocate a significant portion of that to non-recurring expenses. And so major initiatives led by Governor Lee and our General Assembly have been $4 billion general fund infusion into accelerating Tennessee road and highway projects, updating Tennessee's school funding formula, providing $1 billion infusion into our Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology for major capital building, which then goes to support the workforce for many of these jobs. As we've mentioned, Tennessee is one of the more competitive states when it comes to taxes. No tax on individual personal or investment income, no personal or real property tax at the state level, and no estate or inheritance tax. The tax on investment income was phased out over the last decade, as well as the estate or inheritance tax. We have a state sales tax rate of 7%. And a local option sales tax rate of up to 2.75%. We have a corporate income tax rate of 6.5% and a corporate tax on the net worth or book value of a company at 0.25%. We do have gasoline and fuel taxes, which are earmarked for transportation, and those work to fund our roads. As for distribution of our total revenues, like Florida, a significant portion, more than half of our taxes come from the sales tax. So for every state tax dollar, what this pie chart represents is for every state tax dollar collected, where does that revenue come from? So 56 cents of every dollar comes from our sales tax, 15% comes from our franchise and excise tax, our corporate income and net worth taxes. And next largest tax will be our gross premiums tax. That's a little bit of history on Tennessee's income tax. While while the state Supreme Court has multiple times engaged on the question of whether a general income tax is constitutional, the State General Assembly has at times proposed and failed to pass a general income tax. And in 2014, the General Assembly passed and the voters approved an amendment to our state constitution to very clearly prohibit a income tax on general income. At that same time, Tennessee had a 90-year tax on dividend and interest income. This was a tax that disproportionately taxed retirees. That was phased out in 2018, or was repealed in 2018 as part of a multi-year phase out. Just a quick review of our sales and use tax, and then I'll pause here for questions. 14.4 billion of our 20 state sales and use tax. Combined state and local sales and use tax rate is 9.75%. That is collected by the seller. If not collected by the seller, Tennessee is a border state. So you can imagine with a higher sales tax rate, there is an opportunity for arbitrage. You can drive across the border, purchase it at a lower rate. Use tax does apply to that. So if a individual in Chattanooga drove to Georgia to purchase something at a lower sales tax rate, they would owe use tax for the difference in tax rates that they paid there. Sales and use tax also does apply to a broad set of services. I don't have I could provide this committee with a more comprehensive list of what those services are, but a general theme is if it has to do with either handling or repairing or addressing a tangible good, you're going to see sales and use tax apply to that. We also do apply a sales tax to food and food ingredients.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes,
Do you have some examples? I'm just trying to make sure I understand it.
For how the sales tax applies to certain services.
Right. Which ones y'all apply it to?
So like auto repair would probably be a good example. If you get an oil change, you would pay sales and use tax on that. Absolutely. We do apply a 4% flat state sales tax to food and food ingredients. That's food that is not prepared for immediate consumption. The full sales tax rate would apply to food purchased at a restaurant, whereas groceries purchased at a grocery store would have the 4% tax rate. And for local tax, we do have what's called a single article cap, where the local sales tax only applies to the first $1,600. So a big ticket item like an RV or a trailer or something that may exceed that cost would you would only be paying state tax on the excess amount there. As there for questions, I do have some more history on our franchise and excise tax as well as property taxes I'm happy to go into.
Any questions right now from the committee? Got it. Senator Warwick.
Got a chance to visit briefly with Tony as we entered the building together. Thanks for bringing this information to us. It looks like from what you've presented that Tennessee has one of the highest sales tax in the country. But how does that rank? Because you've got the 7% and then the local option takes you up.
I do know generally that it is among the higher. I don't have an exact ranking of that for you that I could provide. I can certainly research that and provide it to you at a later time.
Well, Chairman Harbison. Did you have another question, Senator Warwick? Go on.
I did.
Go ahead.
You all are taxing groceries, which are you familiar with the regressive tax policy, which kind of everybody paying the same rate means that the lower income families are bearing a heavier burden than the wealthy families. And isn't that, and are you familiar with that concept?
I've heard that criticism before, yes.
And I see that this single article cap, wouldn't that benefit the wealthiest if you cap the application of local tax to the first 1,600 and then the rest on top of that's not taxed? And then
I wouldn't have the data to tell you kind of based on, because we don't collect income tax and don't collect that data of who is taking advantage of that, I don't have the data to tell you, the distributional effects of that. I could tell you that any individual is able to take advantage of that. So for a lower income family, I think being able to avoid the tax rate, that excess tax above $1,600 would also be available to them.
And you've got the lowest, the lowest, the lowest, households, lowest income households paying, the highest, percentage compared to the wealthy from the numbers that I'm seeing.
I've not been presented with those numbers. I'd be happy to take a look at them and
Great,
and
great. It's a study of all the states that have, that's been made by the national organization, ITEP. TEP.
If you may, Chairman. Yeah, I will note that Tennessee's enjoyed significant economic growth over the last 20 years, and that significant economic growth is imbued to the benefit of all Tennesseans. Our poverty rate in the state of Tennessee has dropped 4 basis points since 2011. Now tracking, I think we're almost head to head with Georgia. So I think we've, as the economy has grown, the rising tide has in fact lifted all boats, and we are seeing significant growth in both business formation, new job relocation, and family household income.
I'm going to go to Chairman Harbison. You have a question too, Chairman? Did you have a question? Sorry. Oh, you had a question, Chairman Hufstetler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I do my question, I will comment that we saw the same $1 billion increase with Marketplace Facilitator here at the same time during COVID coming in. And we were glad to charge the out-of-state residents or the out-of-state companies the same tax rate as our in-state companies. The page, I guess it was about 3, the budget, when I look at those numbers, they seem to conflict, but I guess I figured it out. You got that the state budget for Tennessee is $4,081 per capita, and Georgia's $3,630 per capita, so we're lower. But then the tax foundation says the state tax burden per capita is.
I was worried about
Assume
that.
that's local taxes.
Yes, sir. Well, I will say, I was looking at that last night, and when you look at the FY state budget, those numbers do come close together. And I think part of this may have to be maybe I lack of familiarity with how projections work with the FY26 budget, Georgia state budget. So from FY25, those numbers were almost identical per capita.
But the second category there, state tax burden, I assume that's all taxes, which would be local taxes. So apparently we charge a lot more local taxes.
I think it may be state tax only from the tax foundation.
Okay.
Significant local property taxes.
Thank you. Questions from members of the committee? I've got one. I'm not advocating for this position, but I want to be fair to all the sides that we've heard speak. There's obviously been a lot brought up to us about sports betting in Tennessee. When you look at your pie chart, where are you attributing that? Because I don't see that on your chart.
Yes, sir. So what this pie chart shows you are our state tax revenues. We have earmarked 100% of our online sports betting revenues for the lottery. And so the lottery revenues are considered a separate bucket. Because they are earmarked for higher education purposes, that would not be reflected.
So that's not making your sales tax 56% higher. You're not burying it in sales tax. I was just making sure, as I'm trying to compare apples to apples across lines, that I understood where that was. Sure. Thank you. Any other questions from members of the committee? Okay. We will grant you that.
Thank you, Tony. I'm just looking, what's your tax, the tobacco, beer and alcohol beverages? Did you all adjust those upward?
I do know that I do know that there was a recent adjustment as it relates to smokeless tobacco. I think that is I couldn't give you the specifics of that. I've not worked on that issue directly. I I do know our tax rate. I have not heard or been told that our tax rate is out of proportion with the national average or median.
Thank you so much for being here. If you don't mind hanging around in case we have some time for other questions. Our last presenter, thank you again, Tony, will be Sarah Hicks from Texas. Sarah is a partner at the Texas-based Hicks Pate Strategies. Prior to that, Sarah was a senior advisor and budget director to Governor Greg Abbott of Texas. Sarah left the governor's office after 22 years of state service. She joined the office of the governor in late October 2017 and was instrumental in ensuring the passage of several important policies and legislation, including crafting financial strategies to support the state after Hurricane Harvey's devastating effects. So we may be able to ask you a couple of questions as it relates to how reduction of the income tax might make Georgia more or less able to respond to emergencies such as those we've seen over the past few years. She has a huge resume that I could spend the next 15 minutes still reading through, but I'll skip to the end and tell you that she holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from Texas A&M, go Aggies, and a master's in public service administration from the Bush School of Government at Texas A&M as well. Sarah, we're really honored that you took time to come join us today, and thank you for being here to help us understand how we can continue to chase Texas on tax policy.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here, honored to be asked. So thank you. As you said, my name is Sarah Hicks, and I've been invited to talk to you about Texas tax structure from my own perspective, given my experience most recently as Governor Abbott's budget director, but then also director of the Senate Finance Committee for 10 years. We're here to talk taxes, and obviously no one likes to pay any taxes, but that's not really what we're debating here. There is a general acknowledgement that the state does need revenue to take care of state duties, public safety, public education, infrastructure. And so I think the real question before you, if I may take the liberty, is to say, what is the least burdensome tax structure that both collects what is necessary as well as provides a free economy for business and residents to prosper? The Texas answer would be, it's not an income tax. So as you consider how to eliminate Georgia's income tax, I'd like to lay out Texas experience over the last 2 decades, not so much as a brag, though it may be, but more so as an example of some of the kinds of issues and decisions that Texas has encountered while having no income tax. And I would affirm that Texas has seen lots of benefits, the benefits that you heard earlier, the benefits I know that y'all talked about at your last meeting. So for Texas, if Texas were a country, it would have the 8th largest GDP in the world. Texas has won the Site Selection Governor's Cup for the last 13 years. The Chief Executive Magazine has selected Texas as being the best state for business for 21 consecutive years. And so as companies have moved to Texas, other people seeking employment have also moved, and they've brought their family. And that means that Texas is growing at an average of 1,500 new residents a day. And additionally, as these businesses come, they bring their executives who love the fact that there's no income tax on their executive pay. And they bring their families and their company and their employees, and they are investing generously in our communities in all sorts of ways. But the other thing is that when we have all these really bright, brilliant business people in Texas, guess what? They're always starting new businesses. And where do they start these new ventures? Most likely in Texas. And so it has just this self-propelling effect when you are encouraging those kinds of residents to come live in the state. So what has made Texas so attractive? Texas has never had an income tax, which has long put us on the radar for business. But then in 2019, Texas voters made it even harder to create an income tax. And the only surprise is that the constitutional amendment passed with only 74% of the vote and not 100%. But it was a way to give businesses assurance once again that we are not going to tax your income. Please come here. But with that, Texas hasn't settled by simply saying we won't have an income tax. Texas has diligently pursued the goal of being the best state to live, work, and raise a family, if I can quote my former boss, including by continually refining our tax structure. Though we do not have a state property tax, Texas, like many other states, has wrestled with how to relieve the local property tax burden, which is another hated tax. In 2006, in order to reduce the school maintenance and operations property tax rate by a third, the legislature reconstituted the state franchise tax into a tax on margins and increased tax rates on a handful of other taxes, including tobacco and cigarettes. In 2017, the legislature adopted 2 significant policy changes to systematically slow the growth of local property taxes. One was that for public school maintenance and operation tax levies, they cannot grow more than 2.5%. Those levies cannot grow more than 2.5% in a year. And instead, if they grow more than that, that increased value that would and otherwise generate more revenue is used to buy down the local property tax rate. And the state has committed to instead come in and fill any difference between what the local tax is bringing in and what the school formulas would say that that school district is entitled to. So the state kind of took on the burden to ensure that locally those school taxes didn't accrue to the local homeowners. A second major policy change in that year was that the legislature imposed a similar, though not exact, 3.5% voter-approved tax rate threshold on most other local government property tax entities. So this tax limit means that in order for local governments to collect more than 3.5% additional tax revenue, they have to go to the voters and tell them why and convince them and get the voters to approve it. And so those were 2 significant changes to bend the curve on the increase in local property taxes. Additionally, the homestead exemption has been steadily increased in order to protect homeowners' ability to remain in their homes, particularly senior citizens and Texans with disabilities. Assuming the voters approve in November, they will, the homestead exemption for school property taxes will increase to $140,000 for homeowners and to $200,000 for senior citizens. That means most senior citizens will not have a local M&O school property tax bill. And also increase the exemption for business personal property. Sorry, I left that out to help in this whole business recruitment. And meanwhile, the franchise tax rate that was reformulated and constituted in 2006 has been slowly decreased from a high of 1% to its current rate of 0.375% on retail and wholesale businesses and 0.75% on all other businesses that enjoy a limited liability. It is not an income tax because our Constitution says we may not. So we cannot tax general partners or general partnerships, sorry. And the small business exemption has been slowly increased from a low of 150,000 to almost 2.5 million today. And the threshold increases with the inflation rate to encourage not just the big business, but the small business, the mom and pop business, the man next door that wants to create a business. And another significant change this November, voters will have the opportunity to provide another layer of certainty for business by adopting a constitutional amendment prohibiting a tax on financial service transactions. And I'll get to, we are rapidly and developing, seeing a whole financial services business ecosystem develop, particularly in the Dallas area. And this is one way that we are trying to encourage them to come. So as you can see, the lack of an income tax has not impaired the state's ability to reduce even other taxes. It is true that by foregoing an income tax and continually reducing franchise and local property taxes, Texas is more reliant on sales tax revenues. I think we hover about 50 to 53% of our state funds come from sales taxes, which is actually lower than the others you've heard from today. So while we've been making these tax changes, we've simultaneously taken steps to build a more resilient economy to face whatever cyclical economic downturns happen because they do. And we've done that several ways. One is by pursuing a more diverse economy. Texas will always be an oil and gas state, but we are also becoming home for manufacturing, for medical research and production, for semiconductor research and production, space exploration, financial services, and more. We've built a healthy reserve fund. The Economic Stabilization Fund is about to hit its statutory cap this year. At 27 billion or so, which is about 10% of our biennial general revenue deposits. Similar to how we've all been told to make savings automatic in our personal lives, the Constitution automatically directs funds to the Economic Stabilization Fund when certain revenues thresholds are met and/or when there are leftover unobligated GR balances at the end of a fiscal biennium. So there doesn't have to be a vote to move money in. It happens, which causes that fund to continue to grow and be healthy. As an added protection, a supermajority vote is required to spend those funds in a time when you are not in a deficit. So it's economic stabilization. If the revenues have dropped off and there is a need to fill a hole, it is a lower threshold to access those funds. However, to use it for some other purpose, the threshold is increased. One other tool that we have used and relied on are spending limits. Texas appropriations have been limited by the pay-as-you-go spending limit since 1942. I think you have a similar limit, and have been limited to the estimated rate of economic growth since 1992. But with an eye toward responsible fiscal management in 2021, the state adopted a new spending limit based on population growth times inflation. In times of plenty, Texas has used cash to reduce future cash needs with strategies like reforming and paying down pension system obligations, creating endowment funds with perpetual income to replace the need for ongoing general revenue appropriations, and paying off bonds or foregoing bonds altogether and paying cash for capital projects. And we've also preserved other cash flow tools that we all have to dig into our tool basket to get at times when times are really tough. But Texas has had the discipline that if a payment has been delayed by a day, that as soon as it can be afforded, we're resetting that tool so that the next time we have a downturn, we can use it if needed. Importantly, these fiscal disciplines have actually enabled Texas to make steady investment in the critical services and infrastructure the state is responsible for. This past session, for instance, $8.5 billion of new money was infused into Texas public schools. School choice program was created for $1 billion. $5 billion was allocated to build new electric generation. $2.5 billion was set aside for new water infrastructure. $6.5 billion is budgeted to provide behavioral health services to Texans, some which will be provided in newly built state mental hospitals that were paid for with cash. So no two states are the same. Our economies are not all the same, but hopefully there are some policy ideas in what I've laid out and in what Texas has used that can help guide you in your mission here today.
Thank you for being here. You're going to have some questions, I'm sure. I've got some if the other members don't. Any questions from the committee first? Chairman Hostetler.
Thank you for the presentation. I lived in Texas twice. In between, I lived in California, which made me really appreciate Texas taxes even more.
Yes, sir.
A quick story, I won't belabor this, but I'm going into the Capitol in Austin. My son's behind me. He has a knife in his pocket and he says, "Dad, I've got a knife in my pocket." And I'm like, oh my God. I told the security guy and he said, "So let me get this straight. He's got a knife. Everybody else in here has a gun and you've got nothing. You might want to rethink your position." I'm looking at the 50% sales tax. I assume there's a decent percentage from property tax, or where's the rest of it coming from?
So we do not have a state property
Okay.
income, state property tax. Let me get my words correct here.
Okay, I'm going to find out where it's coming from, I guess.
Yes, so motor vehicle sales tax is another next largest single tax, about 7%. And then oil tax revenues for us.
Oh, good. I forgot.
Natural gas and oil. Yes, we do have that.
Never mind.
But although they're not as large as you would think. And then insurance, we do have a franchise tax, as I said, which is about the same actually as the oil and gas individually.
All right, thank you.
I got a couple of questions for you. I didn't say this in your bio, but I know you're also vice chancellor at Texas A&M and served previously in that role. One of the questions that we get quite often in our debate over the past few months is if we were to do away with the state income tax, that we're going to somehow shortchange education. Because of your experience as a vice chancellor of a major university in Texas, I just wondered if you have any comments or thoughts on that.
Well, just so I don't get myself in trouble, I was like an associate vice chancellor, not a vice chancellor. I don't want to take away from anybody else. But what I would say is, I think as part of Texas' strategy to attract business, education has been a critical part of that. And so the legislature has in numerous ways invested in education, whether it's through new buildings, whether it's through particular research funds to allow universities to bring in the best of the best researchers. As I've talked about how we've had these kind of huge one-time cash pots, one of the things they've done is created endowment funds to help some of the systems to have just ongoing revenue. So I guess what I would say is if it's a priority, the legislature figures out how to fund it. And the education is one of those areas where it also reaps dividends going down. And so we've not seen a pulling away of funding higher or public education.
You not felt that education's got shortchanged by the fact that Texas did not charge an income tax?
No, sir.
The other question that I just want to know as a citizen, as a human, how Texas has recruited more Fortune 500 companies than any other state. What role do you think the no state income tax had in that, if any? And if it wasn't this, then was it something else that we need to be looking at?
I think it was huge. If you are a business executive who knows that you can either write a check to the state for a large portion of your ongoing salary or not, that's definitely a factor. But I think what we've seen is that for those businesses, it's not only about their income, it's about the income and the life opportunities for their employees and their families. I think something Tony suggested earlier is also just a stable and predictable and a reliable regulatory scheme, which is not your conversation here today, but that has been an important piece as well. And the funds and the emphasis on public education. I mean, to come back full circle, those companies want to know that public education and higher education are important to the state and that we're investing in there to raise the standards and to raise the outcomes.
And our leader, Anna Vitarte, sorry.
Sorry, I have all these jobs right now. Well, first, thank you for your service. So just kind of piggybacking on the chairman's question, is it not true? I mean, the state of Texas with, all of the, economy and things to scale. I think when we talk about costs, isn't there a huge dynamic impact because of the security? I know Governor Abbott's been having to deal with our neighboring partner with Mexico and the impacts in terms of costs and things. So I think as y'all have done everything you can to eliminate, reduce the income tax, we've still seen, even from that perspective, I think the investments in security and other things that impact, honestly, the rest of America. So can you speak to that a little bit and how that, also to what Chairman Tillery is saying around the drivers of the economy in Texas to be steady, but also just honestly just keep growing despite some of those challenges?
Well, I think we were fortunate is a weird word to use here, but in that when the safety issues along the border were extreme, Texas was in a position that we had some cash balances that we could use aside from the ESF. Now, I will say it's not the question here, but if there was not the GR, there was always the Economic Stabilization Fund, because I think it was that high a priority. You've sort of answered the question in your question, right? Public safety is one of those first line duties of state government. And so the governor worked with the legislature and the legislature funded what was needed to address the crisis at the time.
give you another softball question, but you kind of laid us up for this one. Georgia is competing every day with Texas for jobs. In your opinion, with the non-levy of a state income tax in Texas and the levy of a state income tax in Georgia, is Georgia fighting Texas with one arm behind its back?
Yes.
Other questions from members of the committee? Senator Orrock.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Thanks for coming a long way to share your information with us. We appreciate it. Does Texas give any tax credits to offset sales and excise and property taxes?
Yes, there are several different programs that there are different criteria for each of the program, of course, because nothing is simple, that businesses can participate with. Some are controlled entirely by the local governments because they are offering an offset to their local property or their local sales tax portion. And then there are a few statewide programs as well.
What was the last thing you said? The huge what?
But there are also some of those programs at the state level as well.
Well, you know, I've took the liberty of looking at the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy that studies and ranks the states. Did you know that their tax inequality index measures Texas as having the 7th most regressive state and local tax system in the country?
I realize that that is a criticism of sales tax. I think one thing that Texas has done specifically on sales tax is ensure that the basic necessities, groceries, diapers, formula, those basic necessities are not taxed. And then come around with other, I think Florida was talking about this too, other sales tax holidays right before school starts for school supplies and schools close. There in May is a sales tax holiday for disaster stuff that families should be putting together for their emergency pack, batteries, lights, and emergency food supplies sort of things. So there have been also these targeted sales tax holidays to ensure that those things that families absolutely have to have, that they are able to buy those without the tax burden.
Well, it's just to follow up on that. When you look at the income groups, the lower and middle income groups are carrying a heavier burden. It looks like a middle class tax hike when you're not taxing personal income.
Well, I'm not sure that also the significant changes in the homestead exemption. That homestead exemption actually is the complete opposite of regressive tax policy, right? I mean, it is giving the greatest benefit to the homeowners with the least valuable home. So, I mean, that's kind of turning that on end, and that hasn't taken place. I'd also say that as the economic cycle goes, Texas has typically been last in, first out, if not exactly last in and exactly first out, pretty close. And I think that also gets back to having having a tax structure that is simple and transparent, and that businesses are quick to respond and to go back to hiring and to go back to employing the same Texans we're talking about, you know, the same individuals, same kinds of people that you're talking about. So, you know, I think there's a give and take there as well.
Thank you, Senator. Two things. You said Texas is normally last in, first out. Georgia's usually last in, last out. So we understand through the cyclical environment of tax policy. I do want to ask a question following up on Senator Warwick's question, though. She said this tax policy is so regressive. How do you reconcile 1,500 people a day moving to a state
but it may have now been said that their tax policy is regressive. I can't reconcile those comments.
I think people go where jobs are and they go where they know what to expect. And I think sales taxes are controllable in a certain degree, particularly when you're foods. And so I think it's where people go, people vote with their feet. They do what makes sense for them. People are rational beings when it comes to economics.
Got two questions, and then we got some follow-up stuff to do. Chairman Dolezal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sarah, thank you for being here. I do want to follow up on Chairman Tillery's question. I will look at it from both perspectives, people coming into the state and people leaving the state. Do you know the top 2, 3, 4, 5 states you're receiving population from? And when you're losing population, do you know where you're typically losing those people to?
I am afraid California is a big one to receive them from. But I don't know the others.
And I'll take a turn with my next question. Some of the economic development focused people in Georgia, the chamber types, have expressed concern with our path to eliminating the state income tax because they feel they won't have the tools for, quote, economic development, because the primary tool that we have employed in the state has been essentially industry or sector specific tax credits. So I'll give you an example and I have a question for you. So the film tax credit would be an example of this, right? We provide 30 cents on the dollar back to the studios. The way that typically works is they sell it to a broker sells it to a high income individual who uses it to offset their income tax in the state. You mentioned kind of some broad-based breaks on, I think you said excise taxes for corporations. Do you guys do much in the way of what I just described, kind of sector specific economic development plans? And if you don't, is the view more so that you're kind of casting this wide net, and that's been the primary economic development tool?
Yes, to the last part, but with some caveats, I would say, particularly like and this is ancient history by now, but in 2006, ancient history, when the franchise tax was reconstituted, part of the goal was to go broad with a low rate that you didn't have to do all the carve outs for everybody. Much of the state economic incentives are somewhat limited because we don't have an income tax, so we don't need an income tax offset, right? And so, but we do have a few. I don't want to act like we don't have any. We do have a film program, but it's not a credit on an income. It's a grant that they can come and participate in, though there was a new element added this year that I can't recall at this moment. And then really the governor has been given funds to do economic development to be the deal closer. And so that's not on the tax side. That is on the how do we make the final deal good enough for you to come to Texas? I don't know if that's helpful to you, but
It is. Mr. Chair, can I ask one more question? It's not related. Can you walk us through your spending limits per capita? I think you said those were just implemented a couple of years ago. Grover Norquist was at our first meeting, outlined that that's what South Carolina is doing. And it's kind of tied to rate reductions. Why did you implement that? Because it's obviously not tied to a rate reduction. What was the impetus for the spending cap, and how does it work?
So there are like 5 different spending limits. But I think there is the pay as you go, which is easy to explain. If you don't have the cash, you can't spend. The next most relevant one that the state had used forever is based on an estimated growth of the state economy. And so for a long time, members of our legislative budget board, the deciders for what limit they were going to select, typically pegged that to what was the projected growth in Texas individual income. And I think just as there has become this greater conversation about fiscal management, that became harder for most people to understand, whereas this idea of population and inflation means more to more people. And so we adopted that in 2021. I don't think there is that much difference in actual impact between what had been used and this new population times inflation. But I think people understand more, or think they understand more, what that means. And so that was the reason. Does that answer?
Sorry, Senator Rhett had a question and then we'll go back to the pro tem.
Yes, can you hear me?
Got your mic on the front.
Texas has.
Senator Rhett, if you don't mind grabbing your mic at the front of your, yes, sir, it should be live.
Me,
There you go.
me.
You got it.
I know Texas has oil to supplement its income. Florida has the cruise industry. I was just curious as to if Georgia has something, and this is a rhetorical question, not just to you, but from the Texas side. You know, I was just curious as to what Georgia might have to bring in revenue as those two states as we cut back on the state income tax.
I mean, I don't know the specifics of your economy to give you a good answer, but at some point, it's also just a matter of what's your base? Where are you starting? And then from there, it's how you grow, right? Like it matters what's in there, but at some point, it's also just kind of what's your starting point. And it doesn't matter necessarily all the individual pieces that are building it up. That's a messy answer, but
Senator Walker, pro tem Walker.
On development authority committees and going back and forth, see how that works. And what was that to do with Texas with that oil thing? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Mr. Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The finance chairman sitting to my right may correct me, but my understanding is Georgia does not have a franchise tax per se. We have a net worth tax. It's what we call it. I think that's similar to what you all are calling a franchise tax. The question is there a cap on the value of that? In other words, in Georgia, the maximum franchise net worth tax a corporation pays, no matter how big they are, is $5,000. So it's an insignificant source of revenue for the state budget. Do you all cap the amount of your franchise tax? Is it because I think you said
0.375
but is that
on margin. So cost
So-
of goods sold, income minus cost of goods sold. It's a complicated tax, which is why
so
people are
it's not
trying
on-
to,
it's not based on the net worth?
correct.
Okay, well, we don't have that. What percentage of yours, is that a significant percentage of your state revenue?
It's not insignificant. It is about $12 billion over a biennium, so it's, says 6.5 or 7% of state revenues.
Okay, thank you.
And that's so we're done, but Senator Watson, you hadn't asked a question. You have one?
Yeah, I was feeling left out. So we have a gratuity clause in the state of Georgia that prevents us from giving money directly to individual corporations or business or whatever. And Senator Dolezal mentioned our tax credit method. I assume Texas does not have that from what you've told us. So I'm curious about Texas and Florida and Tennessee. Because again, if we're all at zero, how do we remain competitive if we have a gratuities clause that prevents us from helping with economic development, bringing those businesses to our state?
I believe we do have a gratuities clause, and I think it has to, but I'm not the right legal person to get into all that. There has to be shown a state benefit, which in this case, the companies, I believe the threshold is that the companies have to show a certain number of jobs at a certain pay level that meets these tests that allow them to do the grants.
You teed up a great thing to help with, Sarah, not to cut you off. And I do want to tell you thank you, but we still have some of the other folks, Tony, Ben, and then I believe the chairman's still online, Chairman Sands. Do your states have gratuity clauses? And if you hit your button, I can tell you which mic you are. I'll just make all those live. Go ahead.
No, sir, not in Florida.
No gratuities clause in Florida.
I'm not familiar.
You're good.
I'm not familiar with one, Chairman. We do offer tax credits. We do have tax credits for qualifying events. Those are not at the discretion of a state agency, but we, for instance, have a jobs tax credit where with a minimum capital investment and a qualifying business activity, you can earn a tax credit for each job created. We also have an industrial machinery tax credit to incentivize heavy machinery manufacturing investment.
Yeah, and those as well. Chairman Sands, do you know the answer for Iowa?
I don't for sure. I don't believe that we do. However, I do know when I first got there and prior to for me arriving there, the state on a lot of its economic development programs gave out cash as incentives. That was changed somewhere within my term, and the cash is no longer given out, but there are certain credits, industry specific, that are still given. But we are anticipating them going down as income tax rates go down, because income tax rates are your best tool for economic development, in our opinion.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Watson, for the question. We have a few more things to do. First, I want to thank our presenters one more time. Chairman Sands, Sarah, Ben, Tony, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. We really do want to understand how your state's accomplished the goal that we're moving our state towards. And we want to learn the best practices you had. We also want to learn your failures. We don't want to recreate them. There's two ways to learn: bumping your head or watching somebody else bump theirs. And we'd like to learn the second way rather than the first. We have a couple of business things that I need to take care of first. And then I want to make sure, if you don't mind hanging around to talk to the members who may have some questions they want to ask you offline. In this, we did not have anyone sign up. I know there's about 20 people in the audience. We didn't have anyone sign up to speak. Do you want to ask really quickly, was anyone here wanting to speak today or just listen? Great. That helps us go forward. Do you want to speak, Jim? If you could wait very briefly. Yes, sir. Jim, if you'd like to speak, I'll make that mic live. We can do it that way. I think I can make that mic live. It's not coming live for me. There we go. Go for it.
Speaking. Well, the only comment I have, I'm Jim Duffy, state chairman of Georgians for Fair Taxation. And our movement is to change the state income tax system to a fair tax model. But I was going to make a comment about a couple of the elements of that, but this is not the right forum to do it in, because if these folks picked up on how good the fair tax is, they might change it before we do. And I don't want to jeopardize Georgia's decision in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you for being here and being present at many of our meetings. I appreciate that. Some of the business items, we have two things. First is, as we've begun to move this committee, you'll see us start to try to move towards some narrowing the issues as we begin to develop what we want to present as a committee to the General Assembly in 2026. I need some things from you. As members of this committee, if you have something that you want to definitely see considered by this committee, I need it from you in writing. In other words, if you're saying, I want to make sure we look at this tax or that tax, please put it in writing to me. And there's going to be a lady I introduce to you later, Dr. Christine Reese, who I ask you to put it in writing to her and to Dr. Benita Cotton Orr. And you'll understand why in a few minutes why I need it in did I say it wrong?
Yeah.
I'm about to say, I was like, you laughing at me, Mr. Leader. I was like, I'm pretty sure I know Christine's name, but and listen, and I was in a county the other day and I said the sheriff's name wrong. I'm paranoid now, so don't call me out on that one yet. But I want you to put it in writing to all three of us if you don't mind. The reason being is this. I also want you to put into writing if there are things you want to completely take off the table. We have to get to a point over the next 90 days where we are limiting this to a proposal that we can vote on and eventually a bill that can be drafted from that proposal. I've given you the first example. If you look in your folders, you'll see a letter from me written to this committee today that has 3 proposals that I want to talk to you about specifically. So here's your draft. I haven't only given you a task, I've given you a model to go by. I want this committee to consider for a vote today that we take three things off the table as we move the policy of eliminating Georgia's state income tax forward. The first is that this committee will not propose a levy of a state property tax to replace the state income tax in this discussion. And I open for a motion and then also for discussion.
I'll make that motion.
A motion from the motion from the pro tem and a second from the majority leader. Is there any further discussion on that topic specifically? If there's not, I'd ask for those in favor of that proposal, please say aye. Raise your hand. Opposed, no. And it passes unanimously. The second proposal that I would like us to consider is that this committee's proposal will not raise or increase the state sales tax on groceries. We've heard that comment several times. As you know, Georgia does not charge a sales tax now on groceries. I would ask this committee to consider and ask for a motion to take that idea of raising a sales tax on groceries completely off the table. And I need a motion on that too. Motion from the leader, second by the chairman of finance. Any further discussion on that topic? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. And thank you for considering that as well. The third proposal is I would ask that this committee's proposal not raise the state motor fuel tax, commonly called the gas tax, as in any form to replace the reduction and elimination of the state income tax in our committee's proposal. Is there a motion for that? Motion by Chairman Dolezal, a second by the pro tem. Any further discussion on that proposal? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And that carries unanimously as well. Thank you. I hope you see now this is where we're going to start heading in our committee meetings, as to talking about, debating, and literally narrowing down the proposal so that we're at something at the end that we can present tangibly for our committee to consider. And then after our committee considers it, for the General Assembly to consider. In the process of narrowing and tailoring these items down, we are going to need expert help. And that expert help is provided by the two ladies who have volunteered their time to help us with this on because they believe this is the right issue. Dr. Christine Reese is sitting behind Senator Watson. She was a part of the committee in 2010 that reviewed this proposal. She's also an economics professor at Georgia Tech. And we believe she brings specific knowledge to this committee that would be helpful for us as we begin tailoring down and putting facts and figures together to make this work. Dr. Reese, I'd like to give you just a minute to introduce yourself, if you don't mind, and I know you'll keep it brief always.
Well, it's a nice surprise. I guess I didn't expect to have more papers to grade. I came here. I'm Christine Reese, and just a little bit about my background. I did my PhD. I was so blessed to do it at the University of Chicago. And my teachers were Milton Friedman and George Stigler and Art Laffer. It was just an incredible blessing. And that may give you, when I did my work there, we were becoming the Chicago School. So we were out fighting and doing those battles and developing those ideas. Just incredible way to start. Then I did my work, global corporate finance there. My first teaching position after that was at the Harvard Business School. By the way, there were 5 women and 175 men on the faculty at that time. Again, global corporate finance. From there, I went to Duke, the Fuqua School, and developed more of my work in executive education, and also began to develop a lot of consulting experience. So I have consulted with major banks, investment banks, and corporations all around the world. My work is global. And I also, so from there to the Peter Drucker Center, where again, I was blessed to have an incredibly wonderful mentor in Peter Drucker. Just major things. I think of him every day, advice he gave me, and that was incredible. But also that was about the time when the former Soviet Union, when the wall came down. And so I was part of groups that did a great deal of work in the former republics of the Soviet Union, and a lot of policy work there. And I would say that that really brought me into economic development, which is an understanding of what it takes. And we started there with no bankruptcy laws, no banks, no nothing. And so understanding what it takes to have a vibrant growing economy that creates jobs. I hate unemployment. I work hard every day for job opportunities and economic growth, and for a strong and vibrant economy that you absolutely have to keep this thing going. And then lastly, on the Special Counsel for Tax Reform and Fairness for Georgians that I was appointed to by the legislature with 10 other people. We studied the entire tax structure of Georgia, not just the income tax reduction. And through a series of hearings that we held throughout the state, I absolutely fell in love with the state of Georgia. I heard small businessmen and small farmers and got to understand a lot more about the economy of the state. And I just think I'm so happy to be a Georgian now. And we cover some really broad issues, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to kind of bring more of those forward as a free market classical economist and a pro-growth economist. Thank you.
Thank you for your help and expertise that I know you'll bring the committee. The second person we brought on board is not going to be able to be with us physically here today. She had another engagement. But Benita Cotton Orr, many of you know her already. She was the executive director or president of the Georgia Public Policy Foundation for many, many years before moving on to a different role. And she has offered her expertise as a Georgian as well. I think she's from a transplant from New Zealand and a proud Georgian who South African. She's going to kill me for that one, isn't she? I'm sorry. From South Africa, and saw the policies of how America and Georgia as a whole were better for her and her family. And she's going to bring extreme expertise to this committee as well. That being the business, is there any other business for the betterment of the committee that needs to be brought up now? Yes, we'll send you the email address. As far as the letter, if you can get the letter to me and make sure they're CC'd on the bottom, I will make sure the letter gets to them. Our office will take care of any proposal that you wish to bring that way. Is there any other business? Yes, Senator Orrock.
I just had a question for the chair.
Yes.
And that is, at a point where income tax revenues are eliminated, there are tax credits that we have in abundance. And I'm sure you want us, it would be wise if there's a tax credit we think is worth addressing the need to maintain in some kind of way.
Oh, yeah. And are you asking about for the letters? Yes, ma'am. If there's something you feel we definitely need to take off the table, like the 3 things we took off the table today,
Right.
please put that in writing to me. If there's something you want us to specifically address, feel free to express your fervor in the letter one way or the other as to the elimination or creation of that tax. And we want to be able to debate it, but I'm asking to have it in writing so I can get it to the professionals like Dr. Reese, who can do some numbers and some analytics for us to help us understand that better as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Did you have anything, Chairman Navarrete? 2 things.
I'll be very brief. So number 1, to answer the Texas gratuities clause question, Article 3, Section 51. So they're very similar to us related to that. Dr. Reese, you're a legend at Georgia Tech. There are many legends at Georgia Tech, but legends. So Chairman Tillery bringing a Georgia Tech legend to come help solve Georgia problems. It's very admirable from the Georgia Bulldogs. I want to.
Are you a legend at Georgia Tech?
Well,
Mr. Chair, Mr. Leader.
I'll let the Georgia Tech community answer that question. I'm sure Chairman Dozal thinks so while he's laughing over there. But just messing with you, man. And then finally, to Chairman Sands, I do want to just take a personal note of privilege, just to offer our thoughts and prayers for the Senate Majority Leader, Jack Whitaker. He's a dear friend of mine. We met many, many, many years ago, helping then Senator Rubio run for president of the United States, and served on his core national team back then. And I know he announced, I guess in the last 24 hours, he's going to step down as majority leader as he fights this brain tumor. So just many prayers to him, his family, and the Iowa Senate. He's been a counselor to me and growing into this job for many years. So many prayers to you and your colleagues and former colleagues in the Iowa legislature.
Thank you, Leader Navarrete. The next meeting we are trying to lay out the complete details of it. Expect it will not be here. We want to go out into the community and hear more from others who will be affected by this, pro and con, and get their comments. So expect us to go outside of the Gold Dome. We're looking across Georgia to figure out where that needs to be, but expect that that meeting will be the week of October the 20th is where we're aiming for, probably at the beginning half of that week. I tell you that just for planning purposes. I know everyone's extremely busy and I want to give you as much lead time as you can, but right now that's all the lead time I've got as we look for a location and look for a space that people will feel comfortable coming and speak, maybe even not in a normal government type building fashion. That's all I've got for now. Any other questions from members of the committee? Thank you so much for being here, and please do, our guests, please do stay around because I think folks may have some questions for you. Thank you so much again to our presenters. We are adjourned.